What if I told you that the biggest treasure hunt in human history, the one that literally mapped the modern world, was based on a single 5-letter word? A word that drove Christopher Columbus to accidentally bump into the Americas, inspired the legend of El Dorado, and drove Victorian explorers to actual clinical madness in the African bush. We are talking about Ophir. And no, this isn't some fairy tale or a bad scene from an Indiana Jones movie. We are talking about 14 tons of pure gold. That is over $2 billion in today's money. That was shipped into Jerusalem and then just vanished. For 3,000 years, everyone from Roman emperors to modern archaeologists has been asking the same question. Where is the land of Ophir? Was it a secret mine in Zimbabwe? A lost civilization in the Philippines? Or was it somewhere else entirely hidden in plain sight? Most people today think it's a myth. They think it's just a story. But it's not. The receipts are real. The invoices exist. But to find it, we don't need a treasure map. We need forensic biology, ancient wind physics, and a linguistic detective story that is honestly going to blow your mind. Stick around because we're going to solve a 3,000-year-old cold case right now, and I promise you, the answer isn't just about gold. It changes everything we think we know about how connected the ancient world really was. We are going to look at DNA evidence, ancient cargo manifests, and the specific breeding habits of peacocks. Yes, peacocks. Trust me, it matters. Okay, let's set the scene. You need to delete the image of King Solomon in robes and sandals sitting on a throne doing nothing. We need to go back to around 970 BC, the Iron Age. This is the era of the United Monarchy. And you have to understand, Solomon wasn't just a king, he was basically the CEO of the ancient world's biggest trade conglomerate. He was the Jeff Bezos of the Mediterranean. He realized early on that you can't build a superpower just by herding sheep. You need logistics. According to the historical records in 1 Kings and 2 Chronicles, Solomon pulls off a trade deal that essentially breaks the economy of the Near East. He looks at his map and realizes Israel is a land power. They have sheep, they have olives, but they don't have ships. So he teams up with a guy named Hiram, the king of Tyre. Think of the Phoenicians like the UPS or Maersk in the ancient ocean. These guys were terrifyingly good sailors. They knew how to navigate by the stars, specifically Ursa Minor, which the Greeks actually called the Phoenician star, when everyone else was hugging the coast terrified of sea monsters. So Solomon builds a specialized industrial port at a place called Ezion-Geber, which is right near modern-day Eilat on the Red Sea. Archaeologists like Nelson Glueck actually found massive copper smelting facilities there. It was an industrial zone. Solomon provides the base and the copper. Hiram provides the ships of Tarshish. Now this is a specific term. These weren't fishing boats. These were massive, deep-hulled cargo vessels designed for heavy ore. Think of them as the oil tankers of 1000 BC. And they launch a fleet into the unknown. Here is the crazy part. The fleet vanishes for 3 years. Not 3 months, 3 years. In the ancient world, that is an eternity. That's enough time to get lost, get mutinied against, and get eaten by a kraken 10 times over. But they didn't get eaten. When they came back, the manifest was absolutely insane. The texts say they brought back 420 talents of gold. Let's pause and do the math on that, because talent sounds like a cute coin, but it's not. A biblical royal talent weighs roughly 34 to 60 kilograms depending on the standard. But let's go with a conservative 34 kilos. That means 420 talents is roughly 14,280 kilograms. That is over 14 metric tons of gold in a single shipment. If you adjust for inflation and the purchasing power of gold back then, Some economists estimate the influx was so massive it caused a localized economic crisis. The Bible actually says that because of this influx, silver became as common as stones in Jerusalem. Basically, Solomon caused hyperinflation because he had too much money. It's the ancient equivalent of printing money until it's worthless. But the manifest didn't stop at gold. This is where the mystery actually gets good. The ships also brought back a very specific, very weird shopping list: silver, ivory, apes, peacocks, and something called almug wood. So here's the billion-dollar question. Where on earth did they go? If you look at a map of the Middle East in the 10th century BC, you can't just walk to a place that has gold, elephants, monkeys, and rare timber all in the same zip code. Israel doesn't have it, Egypt doesn't have it, Arabia doesn't have it. This creates a forensic profile. We're looking for a place that has all of these things naturally. For centuries, everyone wanted a piece of Ophir. The Portuguese thought it was in Zimbabwe. Christopher Columbus, and I'm not joking here, he actually believed the Caribbean island of Hispaniola was Ophir. In a letter to the King of Spain, he literally wrote that he had found Solomon's mines. He didn't, obviously. He found Haiti, but the obsession was real. The problem is, Ophir isn't on any modern map. It's a ghost, it's a phantom place name that implies wealth but gives no coordinates. Was it a mine? A city? An entire country? To solve this, we have to stop thinking like adventurers and start thinking like forensic scientists. We need to look at the fingerprints left on the crime scene. And the biggest clues aren't the gold bars. It's the monkeys and the wood. Because while gold can be melted down and moved anywhere, biology doesn't lie. Plants and animals evolved in specific places. If we can figure out where the peacocks came from, we find the gold. But before we jump on the boat and start crossing the Indian Ocean, I have a small request. We are trying to build the best history community on YouTube. And if you love solving histories and possible puzzles, please smash that subscribe button and hit the bell. It really helps us dig deeper into these stories and bring you better content. Okay, let's look at the suspects. All right, let's look at the evidence. Over the last few hundred years, 3 main theories have popped up. We're going to rank them from nice try but no to holy cow, this explains everything. We have to start with the African connection, specifically Great Zimbabwe. This was the favorite theory of the Victorian era, and it's got a lot of drama attached to it. Picture this. It's the late 1800s. A German explorer named Karl Match is stumbling through the bush in what is now Zimbabwe. He's starving, he's desperate. At one point, he was actually writing fake telegrams to himself in his diary because he was losing his mind. And then he bumps into these massive stone ruins. Great Zimbabwe. Towering walls, millions of granite blocks, no mortar. It looked like a lost civilization. It looked impossible. Now, Match and the Europeans at the time had a bias, a big one. They couldn't believe that indigenous Africans built this, so Match writes in his diary that this must be Ophir. He claimed one building was a copy of Solomon's temple and another was the Queen of Sheba's palace. He even claimed the wood lintels were Lebanese cedar brought by Phoenicians. It fit the narrative perfectly because South Africa has some of the deepest gold reserves on Earth, and there was an ancient port nearby called Sofala. It sounds convincing, right? Massive gold mines plus massive stone ruins equals King Solomon. It even inspired the famous novel King Solomon's Mines. But then science ruined the party. When modern archaeologists finally radiocarbon dated the wood lintels in the walls of Great Zimbabwe, the ones Match thought were cedar, they weren't cedar. They were African leadwood, and the dates didn't match. The carbon dating showed the structures were built in the medieval period, around the 11th to the 15th centuries AD. That is nearly 2,000 years after Solomon died. So unless Solomon had a DeLorean, Great Zimbabwe is out. It was an incredible African civilization, the Shona people who built it, but it wasn't over. Interestingly, there is a tribe nearby called the Lemba who have DNA markers connected them to the Middle East. So there was contact, but the timing for the buildings is just wrong. Now we have to talk about the theory that has absolutely exploded on the internet lately. If you go on TikTok or Facebook, you will see people swearing that Ophir is the Philippines. And honestly, I get why people want to believe this. The Philippines is incredibly rich in gold. I mean, look at the golden Tara of Agusan. It's this 4-pound solid gold statue found in a river in Mindanao in 1917 by a Manobo woman. It's 21 karat gold. It's spectacular. And then there are the boats. In Bhutan, archaeologists found these massive ancient boats called balangai. The mother boat they found is like 25 meters long with wooden pegs the size of soda cans. It proves that ancient Filipinos were master navigators who could cross oceans. So we have gold, and we have ships, and then there is document 98. You will hear this cited constantly. People, including politicians like Congressman Dan Fernandez, claim there is a document in the General Archive of the Indies in Spain that explicitly says Ophir is the Philippines. It's called the Colección General de Documentos Relativos a las Islas Filipinas. And yes, the document exists, but here is the catch that usually gets left out. Document 98 was written in the early 1500s during the Spanish conquest. It wasn't an ancient map, it was a Renaissance explorer trying to guess where Ophir was. The document describes a route from the Cape of Good Hope to India, then to Burma, Sumatra, Moluccas, Borneo, Sulu, and then to Ophir. But the text actually identifies Ophir with the Ryukyu Islands near Japan, or the region in general. It was 16th century wish fulfillment. The early Spanish explorers were obsessed with the Bible. When they found gold in the Pacific, they just labeled it Ophir to get more funding from the king. It's like Columbus calling Native Americans Indians because he thought he was in India. Just because a guy in the 1500s guessed it doesn't make it true for 970 BC. Also, we ran into a biology problem again. The Philippines has gold, sure, but does it have the specific red sandalwood mentioned in the Bible? Does it have the lions in the specific ivory trade routes documented in the 10th century BC texts? Not really. The linguistics don't match up either. The Hebrew words for the cargo aren't Tagalog. So, while the Philippines was a gold superpower in its own right, seriously, the Butuan kingdom was rich and the craftsmanship was world-class, it's likely not the biblical Ophir. So, if it's not Africa, and it's not the Philippines, where did the gold come from? This brings us to the heavy hitter, the theory that fits every single piece of the puzzle. We need to look east. We need to look at India. And the smoking gun of this mystery isn't a gold bar, it's a bird. The Bible uses a very specific Hebrew word for peacock, tukim. Now, if you know anything about Hebrew, you know it's a Semitic language. But tukim isn't a Semitic word, it's a loan word. It's like when we say sushi or karaoke in English, we stole those words from Japanese. So, where did the Hebrews steal tukim from? Linguists have traced it back to the ancient Tamil language, spoken in South India. The old Tamil word for peacock, specifically the gorgeous tail feathers, is tokai. Tokai became tukiim. It's almost identical, and biology backs this up 100%. The blue peacock, Pavo cristatus, is native to only one place on Earth, the Indian subcontinent. It is not native to Africa, it is not native to the Middle East. If Solomon had peacocks, his ships went to India. But it gets even better. Let's talk about the wood. The manifest lists almug wood. It says this wood was used for pillars and musical instruments, and it was red and super hard. For years, people guessed it was cedar. But cedar is soft. You can't make a high-tension harp out of cedar, it would snap. You know what you can make it out of? Red sandalwood. Perdicarpus sandcalignus. And guess where red sandalwood grows? It is endemic to the eastern Ghats of South India, nowhere else. And the word? In Sanskrit, the word for this wood is vulgu. In Tamil, it's valgum. You see the pattern? Valgum becomes almug. It's a linguistic game of telephone played by sailors 3,000 years ago. Even the word for monkey, cough, connects to the Sanskrit kapi. The word for ivory, shenhebim, connects to the Sanskrit iba for elephant. The cargo manifest isn't just a random shopping list, it is literally a list of Indian exports. It matches perfectly. Now the skeptics are screaming, wait a minute, India's thousands of miles away. How did they get there in rickety wooden boats without engines? This is where the 3-year detail from the Bible stops being a confusing number and starts being scientific proof. The Indian Ocean is unique. It has a heartbeat. We call it the monsoon winds. For 6 months in the summer, the winds blow hard from the southwest, from Africa towards India. It's like a conveyor belt. You put a sail up and nature pushes you to India. Then it switches. In the winter, the winds blow from the northeast, from India back to Africa. You cannot fight these winds in a sail ship. You have to obey them. This dictates your calendar. Here is how the 3-year cycle worked. Year 1, you leave the Red Sea, sail down the coast of Arabia, and catch the summer monsoon. Whoosh! You are in India, but you arrive in late summer. Year 2, you can't just turn around. The winds are wrong or you miss the window. You have to trade. You have to wait for the timber to dry so it's light enough to float. You have to trap the monkeys. You have to mine or trade for the gold. You spend a year in India gathering your 14 tons of gold. Year 3, the winter winds kick in. You sail back to Arabia, then up the Red Sea. The timeline matches perfectly with the physics of the ocean. If it was just a trip to Yemen or East Africa, it would take months, not years. The duration proves the distance. Solomon's fleet wasn't just hugging the coast, they were blue water sailors riding the storms. So, putting it all together, we have a fleet built by Phoenicians, the best sailors of the time. They launch from the Red Sea, they ride the monsoon winds. They traveled to the Malabar coast of India or the port of Supara near Mumbai. They trade for peacocks, tukai, sandalwood, valgum, and gold. They return every 3 years. Ophir wasn't a single hole in the ground. It was likely the region of Supara in India, or perhaps the Arabian market where these Indian goods were aggregated. Ophir was the brand name for the East. It was the Amazon.com of the ancient world. And the sheer volume of gold, 14 tons? India historically has been the sink of the world's gold. Pliny the Elder, a Roman author, later complained that all of Rome's gold was draining into India to buy pepper and silk. It seems Solomon had the same addiction. He was draining the East of its luxury resources and flooding Jerusalem with them. This changes how we view the ancient world. We tend to think of people in the Bible as isolated, sticking to their little plot of land with their sheep. But this proves they were part of a massive, sophisticated, intercontinental trade network. They were globalists in sandals. So why does this matter? Why should we care about a bunch of dead kings and their peacocks? Because the story of Ophir isn't really about gold. It's about connection. King Solomon is often called the wisest man in the Bible, but his wisdom wasn't just about cutting babies in half to solve disputes. His true genius was recognizing that he couldn't do it alone. Israel was a land power. They were shepherds. They didn't know how to sail the deep ocean. Tyre, the Phoenicians, they were sea power, but they didn't have access to the Red Sea trade routes. Solomon's gold came from the handshake between Hiram and himself. It came from leveraging the strengths of a different culture to unlock a door, the Indian Ocean, that neither could open alone. The land of Ophir represents the moment humanity really started talking to each other. It's the first time the Mediterranean, the Middle East, and India were linked in a commercial superhighway. But there is a darker side to the story, and a lesson we shouldn't ignore. What happened to Ophir? Why did we lose it? After Solomon died, the kingdom split. Later kings tried to revive the trade. King Jehoshaphat built a new fleet to go back to Ophir. But he didn't team up with the Phoenicians. He tried to go it alone. And the Bible says the ships were wrecked at Ezion-Geber. They never even made it out of the harbor. Without the specific knowledge, the tech of the Phoenicians, and the understanding of the winds, the wealth remained out of reach. The location of Ophir was lost to memory, turning from a real place into a myth. It became a ghost story. And that ghost story had consequences. It drove men like Columbus to sail west thinking he'd find the east. He was looking for Ophir. It drove conquistadors to slaughter civilizations in South America, looking for El Dorado. Did you know that? The myth of El Dorado, the Golden Man, was partly fueled by explorers looking for the Ophir of the West. They thought the Incas held Solomon's lost treasure. They destroyed entire cultures because they forgot that the treasure wasn't a magical city. It was a trade route that required cooperation, patience, and skill. They wanted the gold without the wisdom. So, next time you hear about lost cities of gold, remember Ophir. It wasn't magic. It was the result of daring sailors riding the monsoon winds into the unknown, connecting worlds that had never met, and bringing back wonders that became legend. The gold is gone, but the history, that's the real treasure. What do you think? Is the case closed on India, or do you still hold a candle for Zimbabwe or the Philippines? I honestly want to see your theories in the comments below. Let's get a debate going. If you enjoyed this deep dive, please hit that like button. It really helps the algorithm find us, and don't forget to subscribe for more historical mysteries solved. Until next time, keep digging.